Make your marks.
You're listening to the Pullbuoy podcast, 20 at 20.
Hello, Steve here. Welcome to the first of a special set of podcasts to mark the 20th anniversary of Pullbuoy. I've picked 20 of my favourite British swimming moments from the last 20 years and have tracked down some of the swimmers and other people who were involved in those to have a chat about their recollections of those events. This first edition, I looked back to 2004 and the Athens Olympics, and in particular the men's 1500 metre freestyle, which of course saw Davies take a fantastic bronze medal, doubling Britain's haul at those games. So he and I had a chat about his recollections, and the commentary you'll hear during this comes from the Australian TV coverage from Bruce McAvaney and 1500 metre great Kieran Perkins. So without further ado, let's hear what David had to say about that race. If we go back to 2004 and the lead up to Athens, how are you feeling in yourself, in your form? I mean, you were fourth in Barcelona the year before in the Worlds. You broke the British record at trials, if I remember rightly, and cracked 15 minutes. So heading to Athens, were you in a confident mood?
Yeah, I think I was in the best situation really. I was a rookie. I was only 19. I had no expectations. And having not won a medal the previous year, I wasn't sort of touted as being a potential medalist going into Olympic year, which was like flying under the radar really. But training-wise, I was just doing unbelievable things. I'd never felt so good in the pool. I'd had 2-month-long camps in Cyprus in the summer, and just doing the best work of my life by an absolute mile. It was just above and beyond what I'd ever done before. And the lead up to it, just everything went perfectly. I was just feeling really good. The taper went well. I settled into the Olympic Village really well. I just embraced everything about being a first-time Olympian. And the heat was the biggest thing for me because I swam the heat really easily, won the heat just to make sure I got the place for the final. But actually broke the British record again and did a PB, only a small PB by about a second, but it was one of the easiest swims I've ever done. So I knew I had a massive swim in me for the following day then.
So yeah, as you said, you broke the British record again in the heat, and qualified fastest for the final. I mean, you said it was the easiest swim you've ever had. You know, that wasn't a plan that you were gonna attack it and try and get a centre lane for the final?
No, I was in the first seeded heat, so it's normally the hardest one to gauge because you were the first one laying down a marker. But I just thought if I won the heat, then chances are I would be in the final. I wasn't too fussed about what lane I had. But I just felt great diving in and opened up a big lead straight away, really. Nobody was sort of sitting with me. And I thought if I just keep this lead without busting, too much energy, I should be in comfortably and have enough time to recover and have a good swim for the following day. And I was quite shocked at the time, 14:57 in the heat. I think only one person previously ever swam under 15 minutes in a heat of a 1500. So that was like a big milestone. And then as I was swimming down, I saw the other two heats come in, and they were around 15:01, 15:02, and it was apparent I was going to be the fastest into the final. But I knew that didn't mean anything. It was just a matter of getting your lane for the final, and then I knew there was probably 4 or 5 guys who were going to be fighting for the medals, really.
So having got the job done in the heats, what do you do? I mean, you obviously get a day and a half between heats and finals in the 1500. What do you do for a day and a half? Is it stressful having that long wait, or you've done it enough that you just deal with it?
Well, it was my first time in the Olympics, and I was lucky. I had a very experienced coach, Dave Haller at the time, who had just done it so many times and was never fazed by anything. He was very level-headed. So even though I just broke the British record and qualified for the Olympic final as the fastest qualifier, he was very calm, collected, and just concentrating on the process that needed to be done. So I did quite a long swim down, sort of 2,000, 2,500 metres of swimming. whilst getting the recovery food in and everything you need to do, massage, bit of physio, getting back to the village and having a big bit of food and hour sort of kip, and then I go for a swim again in the evening just to keep the feel really, because I felt so good. I don't want to lose the feel of the water. So I did another sort of 1,000 meters in the evening, and then felt good. Didn't have any problem sleeping in the night leading up to it. Everyone else in the team had sort of finished around that point, so I kept myself to myself. I didn't want to get too distracted by others who had finished their meet and were sort of on party mode or on holiday mode because they'd done their races. So I just kept myself to myself. I planned the timeline of the day I wanted to have on the final day. I wrote it up the night before, what time I wanted to wake up, what time I wanted to eat, what time bus I wanted to catch down to the pool. And I guess I was just in the frame of mind that I knew I was going to swim well. I wasn't too fussed about positions. I just knew I was going to have a really good swim because I felt really good, and I wasn't phased by the occasion really. I just was sort of loving every minute of it. I just felt like I belonged in that environment. I was just thought about it all year, and just at that point stayed quite relaxed.
You mentioned staying, keeping yourself to yourself because other people had finished. Was that a big deal for you? The fact that you probably didn't swim until the penultimate day of the competition, and then you came back for your final, and Britain had one medal by that point. Steve had won his bronze in the 200 fly. Did you feel any added pressure on you to do something to try and win that medal in the evening?
No, I didn't feel any pressure at all. Nobody said you need to do this, you need to win this medal. I knew I had a chance, but like I say at the start of the chat, I just think I was in the perfect position of being 19, not really appreciating the magnitude of it really. It was just a swimming race competition which I'd worked really hard for, and having watched it as a youngster, this is what it was all about. I'd watched so many of these Olympic Games, and this was my opportunity to do it, and everything just fell into place. And I just remember walking out and just feeling, oh yeah, I'll have some of this. It felt really good, and I just really wanted to not bottle under the pressure. Really. I just really wanted to embrace it and rise to the occasion. And I suppose when athletes talk about their perfect moment, their zone, that race, I was in the zone. I didn't feel the pain. I just was just living the process I planned for a year, really, and it all came into place.
So do you remember walking out for that final? I mean, Athens obviously was outside, so I don't know how the noise, from the crowd, got down to poolside or whether it just dissipated. But do you remember the atmosphere at all when you came out?
Yeah, I like the outdoor swimming environments, and I know they sort of stopped a few years after Athens, and they were all sort of held indoors. But I used to enjoy competing outside, and if I had my sort of dreams now, it would probably been in a venue like Athens. Warm European outdoor climate in the summer, sort of, I think it was 7:30, sort of evening time, so the floodlights are on, high stands on both either end of the pool, good atmosphere, good walk-on music, which I'm quite into my music, so I enjoyed having the music come on as we walked on, and again, just feeling like, I belong here. I've earned my right to be here, and I'm up for it. Just absolutely up for it.
And had you and Dave, worked out a race plan for that race, or were you very much just going to see what happened? Yeah,
I mean, I was a swimmer who was good at building into races. I knew people like Grant Hackett, who obviously went on to win the race, would always go out fast, hold that lead, and have a very strong finish as well. Whereas I was more of a tenacious, grinding out the splits type of swimmer. So I didn't want to go out too fast. I had to sort of acknowledge that Hackett would go out fast. And I got to the halfway point, I could start picking up the pace a bit and eventually try and finish as fast as I could. So I was always a negative split type of swimmer, swimming the second half of the race a lot quicker than the first half. But I'd done so many race pace and preparation sets in the lead up to it that I knew I could just churn out the 59s, which obviously I hadn't done in the race before because I only just broken the 15 minutes twice, but I knew I can get down into the 1440s by doing these 59 splits. And I'd just done it so many times that luckily and thankfully it clicked in, and I think that's what I did. I think I averaged 59.2, something like that, which got the 14:45. And yeah, like I say, I think the planning just was executed perfectly.
Hackett away fast, already a body length up, maybe a touch more. So he's put a space in them early, coming up towards the first 100.
So you knew what Grant was going to do, clearly, from what you're saying there, but you dived in and he went off very fast, as he always did, to the extent that he was maybe a body length ahead after 100 metres. So you're swimming next to his feet, 1/15 of the race in. Did that faze you? Did it worry you, or was it just what you expected?
No, it's what I expected. And at the time as well, Grant had he still has, to be fair, but he was my sort of idol as well, having won the previous Olympic Games and being world record holder and destroying the fields like he did for many years up to Athens. There's a little bit of a cloud over him going into it because he'd been not feeling great and having some illness problems, not training as good as he had liked to, and there was sort of rumours around him not being at his very best. But his name was still a massive impact, so I kind of had to acknowledge that he would do that. I think the biggest shock was when I sort of started coming back towards him, which didn't normally used to happen.
Davies and Jensen, you feel, are both having a crack at Hackett, trying to stay as close. To the naked eye, I feel they have closed a little.
So myself and Larsen, Jensen was in lane 6. We were pretty much together, catching him. And got to his feet, and that's when I think the first time in my mind I thought, oh, hang on, something is not quite right. Why am I on his feet? I shouldn't be on Grant Hackett's feet. He's my idol and role model. He should be streets ahead. So that was probably the first time I thought, I'm actually in a race with him here, rather than just trying to win the minor medals.
So I was living in Australia during Athens, so I was watching this at 3 a.m. or whatever it was. And the Aussie commentators were actually really worried that Grant had gone out too fast when you watch it back. And you'd already, they knew that you and Larsen were, as you've said, back-end swimmers and would come back on him. But is there a big urge, to chase too early, or were you just confident that last 500 you'd have, enough in the tank, if you like, to?
It's hard to describe, but I was just going purely off feel. I just knew I was doing the 59s. I just felt like my stroke rate, my turnover, my technique, the breathing, everything it's just ingrained into me really how to swim at this sort of pace. And I didn't want to panic and go too erratic, and because even though there's 500 meters left, that's still quite a long way. It's still quite a lot of swimming, especially after doing 1,000 meters holding 59. So no, it was just like, okay, he's struggling, but I'm still feeling good. I'll keep turning on and see where we go. I didn't really overthink. I was just, sounds cliche, but I was swimming my own race. I was just continuing with the splits I had in mind and the pace and the stroke rate I had in mind, which we'd ingrained for so many months leading up to it.
Mm-hmm.
I get a little bit concerned when you see Grant breathing only to the right-hand side every time he swims that 50, because there's a chance that if he's not paying attention, someone could sneak up on him and slowly whittle away that lead.
Grant always breathed one way when he was swimming, always to the right, and I think you breathe, both sides. Do you think that gave you an advantage? So on the way out from the start, he was obviously breathing away from you. He couldn't see you and Larsen, for half of each 100. Do you think that was an advantage to you, being able to watch him both ways or see him both ways?
Yeah. I mean, I was in the perfect position because I was in the middle of both Larsen and Grant, and I could see both of them on either side. I think, ironically, on the way back towards the finishing wall, they used to breathe towards each other, so they generally had pretty fast splits coming back that way. Whereas mine were pretty even because I was breathing both sides. Both fantastic swimmers, great technique. Completely different to how I swam. I swam with a much faster turnover, shorter, sort of spider-like stroke, but floated very high in the water. Those two guys, I'd die for their strokes, if I'm honest. They had perfect, elegant, long, flowing, relaxed technique, big leg kick, but really smooth swimmers, And I think in hindsight, I probably should have gone a bit early because they had that kick at the end, which I didn't really possess it as well as them. And if it came down to a 25-meter sprint, unfortunately, you'd probably put the money on those two over me. Whereas maybe if I did go 200 meters before the finish and almost draw the sprint out of them. I might have had a better chance, and that's the only sort of hindsight I have looking back at it now. I think, could I have gone a little bit earlier, gone a bit quicker, and could I have gone down to the 14:40 rather than 45? But at the time, it was a massive, massive swim for me. A huge performance, and something I'd only sort of could have dreamed about at the time.
I've always kind of thought that 1500 is a bit of a war of attrition. That everyone hangs on to a pace as long as they can, and the people who survive it are those who are there to fight for the medals. And by the time you got to 1,000 meters, I think Yuri Prilikov, between you and Larsen, fell off a cliff almost and started going backwards quite quickly. At that point, did you know it was just the three of you left? You, Grant, and Larsen battling?
Yeah, I think that's a very good analogy what you said, because I've been on the other end of it as well. I've been on the other end when I've been dropped, and I just can't hang on to the pace, and they quickly go, because you're reeling the other way and the other guys are continuing their pace and feeling okay. So, yeah, absolutely. I remember thinking Yuri was probably a bigger threat than Larsen at the time. I thought he was the other one with Hackett, and then Larsen was an outsider as well. But when you drop someone like Prudikov, and you're still feeling pretty good, you're doing a good race, and although you don't take it for granted, you're probably in your mind thinking, I've got 300 meters, I'm pretty guaranteed almost a bronze medal at least, So, and again, it oozes the confidence. If you drop Prudikov and you can see him coming into the flags as you're coming out of the flags, you've got 10 meters on him. That's a big confidence boost to have, definitely.
This is close. We haven't really seen Grant in a real scrap in a 1500. He is normally dominated, but here he's going to have to fight all the way, because Jensen is closing, continuing to close, and there's a long way to go. There's 2:50 out, and the margin now is about 0.7 of a second. Davies third. I doubt whether Davies can get a gold. He's certainly in the mix. He'll get a medal. I'm not sure whether he can raise it to get the gold.
So you get, you're in that last 500. You've worked through. You've just said that you in hindsight perhaps could have gone a bit sooner, but push through, battle to the end. You obviously know probably in that last 50 that maybe the first two medals have gone, or did you still think maybe you could catch Larsen?
Yeah, I think Larsen was in lane 6 and I was in 4, and I thought I was closer to him than I actually was. I didn't, only looking back afterwards, didn't realise how close he actually got to Hackett, and actually maybe even took the lead on one of the splits on the turns.
Hackett leads at the last turn. Gets away, increases the break. He has responded. He's a body length in front of Larsen and Davies.
And yeah, I just think I had too much on that last 50. I don't really, I haven't got a big sprint in me. I definitely didn't at that time. And I just think, I had too much at the end. I don't know whether it might have been adrenaline, it might have been the occasion, and you're given everything. But, if I was really nitpicking and really looking at the perfect performance, I could have maybe gone a little bit earlier. But that's what racing is about, And I think Grant probably didn't swim his perfect race, but he had to dig in. I know he was hurting. He said that was the hardest race he'd ever done. And he swam 14:43, which is fantastic, but obviously was some 7 seconds or more off his world record time. So it wasn't his best performance. But I think it was probably his gutsiest performance, because I think he was hurting. And after speaking to him afterwards, I think he didn't have the perfect preparation. He was ill. He missed some training. And he wasn't at his very best, but like a true champion, still, came away and won the gold medal.
So you touched the wall. You've seen the other two guys touch. What is your immediate reaction? Did you look to the scoreboard? Did you look to Grant? Where
the scoreboard is the first thing. Yeah, I mean, that's like an instant reaction. Every race, you'd always just look straight for the scoreboard.
Do you look for the place or the time?
The time, actually, the time. I think I knew I was going to be third. I think I knew I hadn't quite caught Larsen for second, and Grant got away. So I think I knew I was third.
Jensen, we have to applaud, and Davies too. It was the greatest 1,500 metres race collectively in history.
But the time was the thing that stood out. Just seeing 14:45 was, it was huge. Just been so long trying to get to 15 minutes, and then suddenly you're down not just in the low 50s or the high 40s, you're down in the mid 40s. And I think at the time was the fourth fastest time ever, behind Perkins, Grant, and obviously Larsen. So it was it was huge. It was big, and it was the first time I probably let my guard down as well. I'd been so almost military operation in the lead up to it all, just focusing and training and resting and eating, and then training, rest and eating, and finally let it go, and just euphoric. It was amazing. It was an unbelievable feeling that I struggle to describe, because it was just I didn't ever think I could swim that time. I knew I'd trained well, and people said you could do it, but to actually deliver it was brilliant. So I loved it, absolutely loved it. And then the whole interviewing afterwards with the British media, and the medal presentation, and the lap of honour, and I just loved everything. It was brilliant.
When you finished, you did go to Grant in the next lane, and there's it's a pretty iconic image, I reckon, of you patting him on the head while he's he's going on about patting his chest and practically crying. What was that about? Can you remember? Was it just spur of the moment thing?
I just think it's the respect of all 1500 meter swimmers, because it's just so hard. It's just a brutal race, and I just wanted him to let him know that I respected him, really, and that I knew we had to dig in deep for it, and I knew that he knew that we pushed him as well, and it was just the respect thing, really. He just really had to dig deep, I think. And I just wanted him to know that I really respected his work, and that even at not his best, he was still really tough to beat.
Yeah, I mean, you watch the coverage, and he gets out and he tries to get up on the block to kind of celebrate, and he almost falls off it. He's what effort's taken out of him to deliver that performance. So you and Larsen pushed him to the limit. Absolutely in that race. The presentation, you say you loved it. Do you remember anything? Apart from obviously loving it. What your recollections of that presentation?
I enjoyed having a sort of 5 minutes waiting with Grant and Larsen, and just not being competitors anymore. It was respected rivals who had just finished their job, and all three of us were delighted with the result. Grant, I think the only thing he wanted to do was win, and he managed to do it. And myself and Larsen, being younger, had pulled out the performance of our lives to get our first Olympic medals in our first Olympic Games. So we were all just relieved it was over, and happy with the result, and respectful of the great racer it was. A lot of 1500s for many years have been a case of Grant being miles ahead and minor medals being fought for. And before that, it was the same with Kieran Perkins being miles ahead and minor medals being fought for. And this was the first time we'd seen three guys, well into the 1440s, plus Yuri Prudakov was on 1453, I think, which was a phenomenal performance. So it was good for the event to have that race, and we were all delighted to be a part of it, I think.
And where does that race sit in your in your kind of affection, in your memories? I mean, you went on to Beijing and won a silver medal in the open water, and you won medals at Commonwealths and wherever else. But where does Athens sit in that, in that ranking, if you like, of your achievements?
Yeah, it's quite an easy one. It's by far my best race, by far my best memory, the happiest one. Probably when I swam my best as well, I think. And in some ways, that's quite sad, because I was only 19 and I went on for another 8 years, and that was still me at my best. And my best ever performance. I didn't go on to beat that time. I got close to it 1 or 2 times. But yeah, that, I think, if you're looking for your perfect week in a swimming environment, that was it. Just everything. I just loved it. The preparation, the way I felt in the pool, the race itself, everything was my absolute favourite memory. By quite a way as well, to be fair. It was the best one.
David Davies there, recalling a memorable 1500 metre final in Athens. There will be some more of these special 20 at 20 podcasts coming along throughout May. Keep an eye on Twitter or on pullbuoy.co.uk/podcast if you want to find them. If you want to get in contact, it's at Pullbuoy on Twitter, facebook.com/pullbuoyuk, or go to pullbuoy.co.uk/contact. Until the next one, thanks for listening.
You've been listening to a Pullbuoy podcast special. For more episodes, visit www.pullbuoy.co.uk/podcast.